Thanks for joining us and welcome to Higgs in Conversation With. This podcast is designed to dive into the minds of some of the most successful individuals who are in senior positions within leading businesses in the UK and aims to provide a peek into their life both personally and professionally. My name is James Modley and I'm a partner in the dispute resolution team at Higgs LLP. I'm really excited to introduce you today to George Roberts. George has a wealth of experience in the automotive legal sector, having worked as General Counsel and Compliance Officer at Volkswagen Group Ireland, and now he has returned to our shores to be Head of Legal at the prestigious brand Norton Motorcycles. Now, Norton Motorcycles can trace its history all the way back to the 1900s to Birmingham. Throughout the years, it's changed in various shapes and forms, but is now back after being relaunched by the Indian motorcycle giant TVS Motor Company, and it has really exciting grand plans, which I'm sure George will tell us about. So George, enough about me. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, James. Good to be here and good to see you again.
Thank you, mate. We're going to kick off. So just tell me and the viewers who you are, what your job role is, and what do you do on a daily basis?
Yeah, sure. So as you said, I'm the global head of legal for Norton Motorcycles. I'm actually very new to the role. I think it's my 11th week so far. But, you know, like many heads of legals that you've got on before, I've seen your podcast, we're responsible for the full suite of legal risks, the legal risk catalogue, if you like. And our role is to make sure that we support the business, hit their commercial objectives moving forward, which, as you've already intimated to, are quite exciting for Norton in particular. It's a fantastic brand, a very iconic brand, and one that I'm absolutely delighted to be working for. You will remember me coming in on my motorbike when we were both at Shoesmiths many years ago. So I'm a motorcyclist at heart, so it's a bit of a passion project for me, this role.
Perfect fit, absolutely perfect fit from knowing you, George. But we've touched upon Norton, and I know you've only been there for 11 weeks, so very new. I've been at Higgs now for nearly a year and a half, and I still feel as though I don't know hardly anything that I probably should. But just tell us about the company and how legal fits into that.
Yeah, I mean, the company's got some really strong growth aspirations. It wants to be kind of a world-leading premium motorcycle OEM. That's our mission statement. That's where we want to be. It's an iconic brand. As you said, the history is long-standing, over 100 years old. And during the interview process with myself, I met some relatively senior people in TVS, and the key thing is that we're building a brand for the next 100 years. That's the aspiration. For me personally, you know, Norton is so iconic. My father's like well into his bikes, and he would always talk about Nortons, the old Norton Manx. They won the TT several times. It was a giant of British engineering. But in terms of legal, you know, we're going to have to support their very ambitious growth plans. At the minute, we are currently only selling UK homologated bikes, but we are releasing some new bikes in the coming weeks and months, and those bikes will be for the global market. So there's a huge amount of growth that needs to be enabled. We need to change the business from a UK kind of centric business to a global position business, and of course that means that legal risks that you might be used to dealing with in the UK are now very different when you're selling in, whether it be India or the continent in the US or whatever else. So it's an exciting time, and it's something that I'm building a best-in-class legal team. That's what the ambition is, to make sure that we can support Norton through this growth phase.
I think there's a couple of things, George, that I'd love to pull out and just explore further with you, just on numerous points you've just made. So from a risk perspective, that risk perspective on a global scale will be, I would imagine, quite challenging to manage across the various pieces and then to set at the appropriate level. So legal isn't saying no, it's saying actually, yes, we can, but this is how we do it. Just talk to us, because I know in your previous role over Ireland, how does the legal work with the business to set that risk perspective in the portfolio so everyone is aligned and driving in the right direction?
Yeah, I mean, you know me, I've always had a very commercial view on legal risk generally. There is no such thing as a zero risk approach, and I think the businesses that kind of try and achieve that, you know, they're on hiding to nothing really. But we've always got to make sure that the legal risk is mitigated insofar as it can be. So you're right, you know, when you look at global risk catalogues, there's hundreds of things that are leaping out, and our job is to prioritise those risks, and we've only got so much resource or legal spend available. So it's making sure that we're making the right decisions. And you know, ultimately, that's what senior legal counsel and heads of legal and general counsel are paid to do, is to make those key decisions to make sure they're addressing the risk. We won't get it right all the time. I'm sure we'll come on to talk about mistakes and failures and things like that in the future. But, you know, that's what we're paid to do, is to make some very commercial calls on what level of risk is acceptable and what is not. You won't always get it right. You know, I've come from Volkswagen Group where, you know, the Dieselgate and scandal and everything that happened there is a reminder of what happens when you get things wrong. But ultimately, like a phoenix rising out of the flames, you know, you can rebuild functions to tackle that. But yeah, for me, it's about making sure that you assess the risk in an accurate way. I think part of growing up and maturing as a lawyer is not being panicked by things straight away, making sure you keep level-headed, making sure you really understand, okay, is this a proper legal risk? You know, what's the worst thing that could happen? And making sure that you don't overreact. So I think when I see junior lawyers in teams I've worked in before, they can sometimes be panicked by things that might happen. And I think it's about having that ability to kind of take a step back and not react immediately, and then make sure that you can you put mitigation actions in place to minimize the risk. But there's no such thing as zero risk, as you know. So we just have to manage that.
I think that's a key bit of advice as well, isn't it? Because when we were both young, we worked at the same firm, and I'm sure that I was probably guilty of making a knee-jerk reaction without thinking it all through. But if you just take a breath sometimes and consider everything in the round, the picture becomes a lot clearer. I think that comes with experience as well. Where you are, George, I think I'm correct in what I'm about to say. The factory is in Solihull. That's right, isn't it?
Yeah. So we build bikes in Solihull at the minute. Obviously, with any global OEM, you have to leverage other locations for factories. But the factory in Solihull is a new, purpose-built, top technology, spec'd out factory. It's a fantastic place. As I said to you before, I'm a motorcyclist at heart. So when I go in, sometimes I'll actually go in on my Norton, which is a fantastic thing to do. You know, drive to the birthplace where it was actually made, and you can hear bikes being tinkered with. You can hear them starting up. You can hear them being tested off the production line. It's a fantastic thing to see the bikes back in where they started to be built. You know, over 100 years ago. That's quite special, to be honest.
And that's what I was driving at. So we're both from the West Midlands, and I think having something like that in the West Midlands that is so new, and you being in that role as well, the ability to shape and mould in a way that you see fit with the rest of your team and the C-suite, it's a really exciting challenge. I can see exactly why you wanted to do it. But more importantly, bringing that manufacturing back here right on our doorstep and having such an iconic brand, I think we should be very proud that the investment has been made here and not elsewhere. So certainly, I think it's a great thing for the local economy, great thing for the region, and great to be able to say this is actually where we're making it again, looking back at the history. We've gone off on a tangent, so I'm going to bring us back. But you've had some top roles, George, and continue to do so. So just talk to me. What do you class as optimal performance for someone in your role?
Yeah, and I think this is a good question, because like technically, obviously, you've got to be strong, and having a really broad knowledge of lots of different areas of law is key to a role. But actually, I think I'd probably go more of a softer skill set for what is optimum for my type of role. And I think I talk to my team a lot about being approachable and being authentic, because my team will tell me, I say this to them all the time, but you can have the most technical lawyer in an office at the corner of your factory, but if they're not approachable, if people feel stupid asking them a question, if they've got their door closed all the time and they can't go in and ask the question, you're not actually addressing legal risk because no one's asking them a question. So something that I'm really keen to adopt right from the off, I built the same in Ireland, I intend to do the same here, is to build a legal function that is very approachable, very authentic, doesn't make people feel stupid when they ask a question, and is always there to kind of act as a sounding board. So for me, kind of being approachable, being authentic, and what I mean by authentic is there's a belief that legal always know the answer, and like that's not the case. And I've been stuck with that before. You know, you pretend that you know the answer, or you might bluff an answer or whatever. It doesn't work anymore. Actually being authentic and saying, you know what, actually I've not dealt with that before, but I will do, and I'll come back to you with the answer is a lot more valuable than the bluffing your way through. And then the final one for me is like, we talk about, I'm sure you did the same thing when you were like going through your training contracts. There was that buzzword like commercial awareness, and no one really knew what it was. They kind of thought about it and were like, oh yeah, I've got commercial awareness. But the reality is it's asking the right questions. So, you know, I do stakeholder engagement, certainly early on in a career, and I'll be asking my kind of key stakeholders, C-suites, like, what's your biggest business challenge now? Like, what are you worried about? What keeps you up at night? And it might not be a legal issue, but I bet you there'll be something in there that I can help with. And that's where I think real commercial awareness comes from. It's not just talking about how legal impacts commercial. Obviously, that's a key part of our job, but it's just understanding what the board that we're talking to now, all the C-suite guys, is what's keeping them up at night, and is there anything we can do as a support function, because that's what we are, to help them achieve their goals. So I think those kind of things. So going back to approachability, being approachable, being authentic, and being commercially savvy, I suppose I'd say.
I love that. And I think it's interesting. So speaking to all the in-house counsel that we work with or we've had on this podcast, there is almost a perception, and it's completely wrong when you drill into it, that legal is these people in a castle that is completely separate and distinct from the business. That main function is to say, no, go away. And actually it's anything further from the truth. The good legal teams, the good businesses, blend all of that into one, collaborate, and actually work with one another to understand, going back to the risk point. Okay, so you may want to do this, but this is the risk. Are we comfortable with that? And if we're comfortable, then let's go. It's eyes wide open. But the approachability point, that works not only in-house, but also for us. So for us, as you say, George, we could have the best technical lawyers in the world, and we've got some great technical lawyers. But if you, as an in-house counsel, don't feel comfortable picking up the phone, well, then that's never going to work, is it? It's about being approachable, as you say, authentic, so just being normal self. And that won't hit or chime all of the right notes with all of the people. That's just life. Some people that will work with, others you won't be their cup of tea. But I think over the years, what I've become more comfortable with is that's okay. You can't get along with everyone because that's just life.
100%. I think you talked about the technical ability, and I'm sure we might talk about this later, but like AI is obviously a buzzword at the minute and everyone's talking about it. And my kind of general consensus on AI is that it democratizes intelligence. So being clever and being a really, hot commercial lawyer now is not enough because everyone has access to it. And we hear about all the failures with AI, but generally speaking, you can find out an answer to a legal problem pretty quickly. It's the EQ and it's the ability to land that advice in a commercially sensible way, which AI will never be able to do. To take the context of exactly what's happened, to understand the history behind particular individuals, maybe at C-suite level or above, whatever it is, and being able to land that advice in a way. So I see these EQ soft skills becoming more and more important for senior legal execs as we move forward with this new world of AI too, because of all the reasons we've just discussed.
It's reading the room, right? It's reading the room, knowing how to deliver it, knowing how someone takes that advice. Some people may like it in black and white email. Some people may like it over the telephone. Some people may like it in a various other ways, whatever that may be. It's knowing who your audience is, how to deliver it, and how to maximise that person that you are speaking to and making sure they have the information how they want it. I think it's the soft skills, George, as you quite rightly said. It's the soft skills that you can't teach potentially. It's just something that you learn throughout your career. But that's really interesting. We will come back to AI. We will come back to it. So we'll pause that thought there. But in terms of where you've been, if I were to say to you, what are your 3 non-negotiables for success? What would you say to me?
Yeah, I guess there's some similarities in terms of what I believe we need for optimum performance, but I think high standards for me always. So I don't care whether we're sending an email out to a customer contact center or to the big boss. It should be a very good email, and we should have high standards in everything that we do. That's a given for me, whether when I'm recruiting staff and driving the team forwards. Commercial pragmatism, we've touched on it, being commercially savvy, however you want to discuss it. There's lots of buzzwords. I think for me and for more senior legal roles, it's being less of a technical lawyer and more of a commercial businessman who can overlay a legal lens to commercial problems. That's how I see my role kind of moving forward. It's like we're commercial people. We understand how the business works. We've got a legal frame of knowledge that we can just use as a lens and go, okay, this is how we solve the problem. And then finally, for me, like integrity and honesty, and that comes back to being authentic, right? And I don't mean it like in the traditional firm, in like, not doing anything that's untoward or whatever else. I mean, doing what you say you're going to do. So, if you're in a meeting and you say you're going to do this job or whatever else, do it and follow through with it. And also being open to areas that you don't know about. And there's plenty of those at the minute at Norton. There's lots of big challenges happening. And as a team, I'm always keen to make sure there's development opportunities, but we need to be clear on where we do have knowledge and where we don't. And that's where the externals can support as well.
2 things. One, I'm definitely pinching your lens analogy. I think that's great. Second thing, coming back to something you said earlier and you've just repeated now, actually, it's this fear of a lawyer that you can put your hand up and say, I don't know the answer. Now, I probably suffered with that very, very early on, but again, it's this misconception. And what I say to the team, and I speak because I don't know all the answers at all. I think it's just impossible. And actually, you're not supposed to know all the answers. What you're supposed to know is, where do you go and look for them? How do you get the answers? And then how do you apply that to actually what you're talking about? But for anyone listening to this, there is nothing wrong in saying, George, that's a really good question. I actually don't know the answer to that, but I will go and find out for you. And I think if you try and wing it, people like you, George, or other in-house, or even individuals that may be clients, you can see straight through it. And there's nothing worse. Comes back to the integrity, honesty point. I think just be honest, be authentic. So yeah, bringing it all the way back, completely agree with you. And one of the common themes, interestingly, all the way through this, no matter who we have spoken to, whatsoever, people always are the central point that everyone talks about. If you have good people and you invest in the people make the business. And people are just normal individuals. There's nothing special about any of us. We are just normal individuals that do a job, and we do it to a very, very good level. So I think that for me is key. And if I look at Higgs, you saying that you've been around for 125 years, it's our 150-year anniversary, and all of the same principles that were still built back then exist today. And one of them is our core values, and our core values centre around our people. I digress. So you've just said what your key non-negotiables are. Where were they driven from? Where have you got them from?
I think it's a bit of everything, really. It's like how you're brought up, isn't it? Right at the infancy, from parents, and putting kind of, your key values in there to those failures that we talk about. I was just thinking as you were talking about the last point. I still remember. I think I was quite junior in Volkswagen in the UK, so we're going back kind of a decade now. And I remember being called to a board meeting, and I was asked a specific question about a dealer agreement, and I didn't know the answer, but I tried to blag it, and it was one of those really embarrassing moments when you realise you've not got away with it. The guy who asked the question clearly saw through me. I left the room with the tail between my legs and thought, what are you doing here, George? Like this, but that feeling of not being good enough, or self-doubt, whatever you want to call it. Stop at negligent, but not doing the right thing. It's a horrible feeling. And it's the same in every bit of life. It's like having that, chat with your mate down the pub and saying something you didn't want to say. And, that's how we learn, right? We learn through experience. We're quite simple beings at the end of the day. And so I think all of those kind of key negotiables, non-negotiables rather, have come from those experience. So the high standards one is a little bit funny. I've worked in teams before where in order to deal with the amount of work they have, they kind of adopt like a gold seal approach or a bronze seal approach or a silver seal, just depending on what kind of job it is. And I kind of get it to a certain extent, but for me, and I'm sure my team, and certainly my previous team would say it, like everything has to look and feel professional. And I'm very keen on having like a legal brand. And that can be a legal kind of tone of voice. It can be making sure that our PowerPoint presentations, our advice is like all very consistent. So essentially, when somebody comes to legal, they get the same look and feel in the advice and things like that. It's something I'm just quite picky about, but it comes down to kind of high standards, and that's probably driven from being a trainee with some fantastic partners back in the day, James, to be honest.
I'd agree with that. And it's interesting that that approach and the tone that you were talking about, because actually, if you're a lawyer, your technical skill set should be a given, but it's then how that's delivered. And if you want to build a brand, there will be some tweaks because it's you. And I'm not saying everyone in your team has or will be mini Georges, but there's an overarching concept of, right, this is the level I expect, and this is how I like it delivered. And it's that continuity that will help you with your internal stakeholders. And I'm applying it to our team now as well. We do very, very similar to you. So it doesn't matter who we deal with. It could be an individual. It could be the FTSE 100 client that we have. Every single person will get the same level of advice because that's why they come to us. That's what will set us apart. And ultimately, that is what will help us grow, because people will say, hopefully, bloody hell, that was fantastic. And it was fantastic because we got it in this way, and it's exactly what we needed. And it gave us some options to pick. It gave us the risks, and it was a menu, but actually there was a recommendation at the end of it. So that's something that we as a department, and me personally, my staff will probably say, yes, James, probably too far sometimes, but it's knowing your legal problem, setting out the different strategies, and then giving a recommendation based on a menu that you as an individual, as an in-house legal, can then pick or take to your board, because you know everything, but it's got to be succinct. There's no point being page and page and pages, short and sharp. You brought us onto one of the points I was going to speak to you about, and that's mistakes. So, direct question, mistakes, good or bad?
I guess just a part of development. I think, again, when you're young and you're junior in the role, mistakes always have a very negative connotation. I think as you get more senior, you realise how frequent mistakes happen and people grow from it. Like, as I've grown up, I've kind of really understood the importance of mindset and having this growth mindset just generally. I remember one of the partners when I was training was like, you can make a mistake. It's not a problem making a mistake. You make the mistake again, then we might have a problem. And it's one of those, it's like, and I think that's where we try and transcend that through my team as well, which is like, you've got to have an error culture, because otherwise you're not going to grow. But you can't have a consistent state of errors going through. So you have to draw the line somewhere. But I think it's important to make mistakes. And I'm sure like all of you guests will say the same thing. I don't think that's like anything novel, but I suppose the bit, it's harder when you're more junior in a team to kind of appreciate that everyone makes mistakes. I think there's a lot of pressure put on people qualifying now. we've got people going through the SQEs at the minute, and they sound horrific, if I'm honest. Like some of the stories about what you now need to do to qualify as a lawyer. Don't get me wrong, like we need a good standard of legal representatives in this country, and it's absolutely right that we should make sure that we're checking, make sure everyone's doing the right thing. But you do think, wow, that these guys have to do everything perfectly. And the reality is, like you said, everyone's human at the end of the day. We're not surgeons. We're not saving life on the table. We will make mistakes, and I think everyone needs to understand that mistakes are generally a good thing for growth and for development.
It's funny, isn't it? Because you used the surgeon analogy, and when I think that I'm under pressure or I'm having a really bad day, or something hasn't gone to plan, and we all do it, we all get home and reflect and think, could and should have done that better. I always revert back to, but at least I'm not a surgeon, because if a surgeon makes a mistake, it's life or death. If we make a mistake, it's probably financial or reputation. And don't get me wrong, we don't want to make mistakes. I don't want to. And I remember making a mistake or mistakes when I was junior, and I still make them today in various shapes or forms. It feels like the end of the world, doesn't it? And when you're in the middle of that storm, it feels as though nothing can come and save you. But it's amazing, as time passes, you look back, and it's those stories that certainly made me a better person today than I was back then. And I had another guest say to me that actually mistakes are good, because mistakes show that you're operating right on the edge of your maximum capability. And unless you operate there, you're never going to grow. And I think you've just alluded to that. And I think that's absolutely right. But again,
they call it growth anxiety, I think.
Is that right? Growth anxiety.
Yeah, so like it's like I always have this thing. It's like it's really easy to sit in a comfy chair.
Yeah.
But one of the reasons why I've moved from Volkswagen to Norton is because I felt like the chair was getting comfier. And the problem with a comfy chair is it's really easy to sit in for a long time.
Yeah.
And you can sit there. But you've actually got to move into that slightly less comfortable chair, be in that situation where you've got a little bit more self-doubt and anxiety around stuff that you're doing, and that's growth, right? That's where you're putting yourself in a position where you're growing and you're moving and shaking, and that's something I think we can all take into our next step in our career and make sure that we're moving at the right time.
Well, I think that's healthy though, and again, maybe people may have this perception that when you become head of or when you become a partner, that actually your growth stops, but it doesn't. It just continues as it always has done. And you are constantly learning, whether that's your technical skills, your soft skills that you've alluded to before. And I think you've got to be there. And if you don't, maybe that's wrong. Some people are happy not being there. Others, that's why we're in it, because we want to continue to try and be the best that we can be. And that growth allows you to do it. Another question for you, George. So we've talked about our technical skill set, that it should be second to none. That's a given. But certainly, as head of legal, I think you've got to have the leadership skills to bring your team, stakeholders in the business, and also externals with you on the journey that you want to be on to meet the objectives that you have set. So what do you think makes a great leader?
I think there's two different points to that. There's what makes a good manager and then what makes a good leader, right? So I feel like I'm kind of living in the hybrid of that. Certainly in my last role, I went in as a manager. And what I mean by that is I was managing like day-to-day KPIs. I was making sure that the legal team was answering queries in the right amount of time. I was making sure that we were addressing legal risks in a sensible and pragmatic way. I think as you start making a transition to a leader, actually what you're doing is you're setting the vision and the strategy, and your natural influence is making members of your team then make that strategic vision their own. So they start to adopt that and say, oh no, actually we want to do the right thing as being legal. We want to be responsive. We want to be approachable. We want to be, and as soon as you start hearing your team saying the same things that you've kind of tried to, adopt there, I think that's where you become the leader. A leader, I think, sets a vision and influences people to work towards that vision. I think a manager is somebody a little bit maybe more operational, who's kind of doing those day-to-day kind of KPIs. And I think like every senior leader will do a bit of both. But I do remember like my old boss, and it was a little bit of a kind of opened my eyes a little bit. She said to me, she was fantastic, and she said to me a couple of years into my role, she said, "George, how much time are you spending now doing legal matters?" And I can't remember what I said to her. I was like, I don't know, maybe 60 or 70% of my time. She was like, "Yeah, it's too much." He's like, "You've got a sizable team now. 60% of your time should be managing people.
Yeah.
It should be leading people." And that was something I was like, oh, okay, wow. And it kind of, you need to reframe, and you need to understand that actually as you start to build teams and as you start to build that kind of culture, that's what a role of a leader becomes. It's less into the detail of the legal work. Of course, we still do it. But it's making sure your team is functioning in the right way, and make sure they're all happy, and that the culture's right, and the vibe's right, and that you're dealing with any issues early on. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of my thoughts.
That's a great distinction, and I think that's an answer that we haven't had before, the distinction between the management and the leadership. But just listening to you talk that through, I think that's absolutely spot on. And the leadership point around the team and setting the vision and trying to bring everyone with you, I think for me, team is everything. Same as you, George. It's impossible to do everything. So if you were to do all of the work, that simply wouldn't. It can't. It's not, one, it's not sustainable, and two, it's probably not possible. So it's, for me, I have to lean on my team, and I'm very, very fortunate the team I have is very, very good, because without them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. So I think having the trust in those people and leading them and empowering them to be the best that they can be, and saying to them, look, it's okay if you make a mistake, but just don't do it again. If it's the same mistake, then we need to have a conversation. But I think everything that you've talked about over the last 30 minutes, again, it comes back to the people, doesn't it? It comes back to the people in your team, trusting you, wanting to be there, wanting to grow, wanting to develop, and all pulling in the same direction. Because if your team is fragmented, well, you're never going to hit, one, your KPIs from your management, or your leadership piece of bringing people with you. And I think that comes back to, if I can just go back to the leadership or management point, actually, what is your leadership / management style, and why? How have you found your rhythm to try and get to where you are?
Yeah, and I think this is absolutely key to me, because I've been involved in teams, and I know you have, where there's sometimes leadership is right for a certain time. And what I mean by that, like, I think back to Volkswagen, I mean, going through, difficult situations in Volkswagen, sometimes the iron fist approach was the right approach for that time.
Yeah.
But actually, when you're trying to build a really exciting kind of fit for purpose legal function, then I think you need something different. I think when I think about my leadership style, and obviously it matters more what the guys in my team say rather than what I say, but I think non-hierarchical. I just think everybody has the right to raise an issue or square something up in a meeting. Like I don't like a very hierarchical approach. Caring. Everybody is dealing with their own personal battles outside work. As much as I love my job and I'm very passionate about the automotive industry and motorcycles, not everyone is, and that's also fine. And people have family lives outside of work. Authentic, as we've spoken about, and I suppose then to frame it, I guess, is demanding in the right situations. Like, I have high expectations of my team. I have high demands. I have high standards. But they come naturally when you build trust within your team. So I think that's how I would summarize it. But maybe I should introduce some of the team members at some point and see if that actually is the real joy.
No, I like that, mate. I do like that. And I'm sure the people around you speak of you, because I've known you for a while, and I think what you see is what you get, going back to that authenticity point. And I think that's really important. Really, really important. A question that is split opinion so far. So interested in your view on this. Leaders, are they taught or are they born?
I think it's a tough one. I think there is some natural ability to leaders, if I'm honest. But I think that experiences that senior management go through can create leaders as well. So I think it's a cop out, right? It's a hybrid, but I would say that there are. You see it, right? You see it from playing sport at a young age. Like I've got my son's playing football at the minute, and he's a great football player. But there's two people in the squad that you can tell they're leaders. They're the ones who are shouting, who are making sure that the team knows what they're doing. They're big communicators. That's the way that they're kind of framed, and that's not been learned at that age. That's a natural kind of. Doesn't mean you can't learn it, but I do think that I think someone born with some natural leadership abilities is always going to probably trump somebody who's not been born with those natural leadership abilities and is trying to learn them. I suppose that's my answer.
I like the football analogy. You're absolutely right. Even if I take my back, I'm not going to say how many years, but if I go back to when I was a kid playing football, there was always that communicator of, you need to do this, you need to do that. And at the time, you don't think about it. And it's only now I've engaged my brain to think, actually, that's absolutely right. Because you can't teach someone at that age to do what they do. But equally, I do think you can learn. So I think one thing that I've tried, so as a leader, right, I think it's one of the biggest pressures that I take personally is being a leader. Because if you're a leader, then you've got other people in your hands. And I want to make sure that those other people can be the best versions of themselves, and I'm not letting them down in any way, shape or form because I'm not doing something that I shouldn't be doing. So I think leadership for me is quite heavy, but also it's quite empowering to then see someone do really, really well and do better than you, because that's what it's all about, isn't it? Trying to develop and bring somebody on. But certainly if I look back, I've took snippets of individuals I've worked with historically that I thought, that's great, I need to take that. But equally, I've looked at it and gone, I would never do that. That's just not me, and that's not who I want to be. Going back to the iron fist that you were talking about, and there's a time and there's a place. And I do think times have moved on for various reasons. So it's just about getting that right. But I'd love to know what the secret is, but I'll continue to look. Definitely.
But also, I think like generations that are coming up have different views and values on life too. Like we've just recruited a paralegal, like fresh out of university. She's fantastic, but like I have no doubt that her values on life and what she wants from life are very different to my values when we were growing up. So times change, and I think leaders that get stuck in the past are the ones that don't move and shake with the times, are the ones that are going to struggle. So we've seen it. We talk about it a lot at Volkswagen about kind of different generations coming through and their expectations for kind of working from home and flexible working, and experiences over material goods and all this kind of stuff. It's real. And going back to your point around people, our customers are people too. And once you start understanding people, you've got to get your employees on board. Once your employees are on board, then your customers can be on board too. And it's things like that that we have to be aware of. Like everyone's different. Everyone has a different way of working, and we have to be kind of adaptable to that, I guess.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think that everyone is a person at the end of the day, isn't it? Whether you're consumer facing or whether you're dealing with your in-house individuals or boards, everyone is an individual. Coming back to a point that you did make, and I'm not afraid to say at all, so imposter syndrome to me has been real. There have been occasions where I've sat there and looked around and thought, one, how am I here? And two, how am I going to add anything to this? Because who am I? I'm just James. Going back to your boardroom example, and I think the answer will be yes, but correct me if I'm wrong. So just speak to the viewers more than anything. Imposter syndrome, is that a real thing for you? Have you ever had imposter syndrome?
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you, I've got a bit of a controversial opinion on imposter syndrome, and it's more around why the naming of it, because I think the word syndrome suggests some kind of negative connotation, some kind of pathology, when the reality is it's just a natural feeling that I think everybody gets. And it comes back to this kind of growth mindset, growth anxiety. I've heard it called like leveling up anxiety before. Like I don't think it should be called a syndrome, because I haven't spoken to any senior leader over the last 5 years who doesn't suffer from it. So, it's something that I think everybody has. But I think, that self-doubt transits everybody, I think. I think obviously I've had it. I think everybody does. But I think it's a good thing. It shows that you're actually stretching yourself. And like you said, everyone's different. Some people don't want to grow to the next level. Not everybody wants to be a leader, and that's fine too. But I think that for those people out there who want to be leaders, who want to put themselves in the real hot seats around the world, is making sure that at that point where you feel comfortable, you need to push yourself. You need to get to that next role, because you're not growing whilst you're comfortable, and you're not growing. And I suppose to link it, you're not growing if you don't suffer from imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I agree with that. I can't remember who the sports individual was, but it's that nervous feeling of I'm about to do this. Can I do it? Am I good enough to do it? And it was a runner. I can't remember the name, but they suffered with severe nerves before the race, and they said actually without that, as you just said, George, it showed that I cared, and it showed that I really wanted it. So actually, if I didn't feel nervous, there would be something wrong with me. And I think that's exactly the same for me personally. If I get nervous or I look around and think, actually, how am I going to contribute? That just pushes me on, because there'll be something that switches and says, look, you've earned your place. You're good enough. You know what you're talking about. Just go and be you. So I think that nervousness, that imposter syndrome, I don't think that was that controversial, actually, George, for you. I was really excited about some
you were nervous
controversy.
When I said controversial.
I think that was quite watered down for you, but maybe it's because you're on here.
Maybe.
Look, really conscious of time. So we've been talking now for 40 minutes. I'm just going to move things along a little bit if I can. So trends in your industry. Appreciate you've literally been there for 11 weeks, so I'm putting you on the spot here. But you've said that how the growth objective applies not only to the UK, but internationally, globally. What trends do you see shaping your industry, and how are you going to work with them to get to where you want to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big ones is kind of digitization and AI. I think when we look at the motorcycle industry, you're generally trending, I might be being unfair to some OEMs, but you're generally trending about 5 years behind the car OEM industry. So when you go into a modern car now and you put your phone down and it automatically connects, and you've got CarPlay and Apple Play and everything that goes with it, it's an extension of your phone essentially in modern cars nowadays. I think we'll start to see that same thing happening with motorcycles, particularly in countries where our customers are using motorcycles, not like in the UK where it's a sunny day job or something that's an additional transportation need, but where it is their only mode of transport. So there are a huge number of growing middle classes in developing countries, and those middle classes need to be served by different brands and more premium brands. And I think that's something that Norton has its eyes firmly set on. But what does that mean? It means, well, we have to provide a fully connected, digitized product. So there's obviously lots of legal challenges with that. There'll be some AI integrations. I'm absolutely sure of it. There was a big point in Volkswagen only a few months ago where we had ChatGPT in our cars for the first time. So I see that as a big thing. As always, like the automation of vehicles is something that people are generally always a bit nervous about, but it's, I've been driving cars for years now, obviously with my time at Volkswagen Group, and every model that comes along, if it's like auto brake or lane assist or whatever else, they're always extremely helpful actually once you go through with it. So I think those are the kind of key trends. I suppose when you look at Norton generally, this globalization topic is a big thing. Like the UK market alone and the kind of hobby riders alone, but not enough to make an OEM successful. We need to gain the heart and desires of people that are using motorcycles day in, day out, and that's something that's the key strategy for us.
I'm sure you'll do it. I'm sure you will, with the leadership team that you have around you and you driving it forwards. I've got no doubt. AI, George, just very, very quickly. We've touched on it a couple of times. I was at a conference yesterday. It was square and at the front of topic of conversation, AI. Are you using it in your team? Do you think you will use it? What are your views generally? I know we could go down a rabbit hole here and have another conversation for an hour, but what's your view on AI?
Yeah, in short, I'm a massive proponent of AI. I think we need to use it. Obviously, it has its fallbacks, and you have to be careful. has its hallucinations. We've had lots of customers before, certainly in Volkswagen time, using AI to legally battle us, but then you come up against this case that you've never heard before, and all of a sudden it's like a hallucination of AI, which is quite hilarious. But I think we need to use it. Certainly when I look at my budget forecasting for the next couple of years and the legal risks I've got to try and deal with, like, certainly for things that are generally more automated. So like first review of standard terms, contract management kind of systems, that type of stuff. Lots of things in data protection. So ROPA, subject access requests, managing all that kind of stuff. I think AI has a really useful purpose. Yeah. I think the bit, and again, maybe a semi-controversial opinion, is I went to a legal fair the other day, and everybody is pushing some kind of AI tool. And I just think, the market's just saturated with tools that are basically just leveraging from OpenAI and not doing anything that you couldn't probably do with ChatGPT anyway. I think there'll be a lethargy around that from in-house counsel, because I'm seeing it already where people are just going, oh, come on, like, give me something that actually really works. But yeah, we use it. We use Copilot internally. There is, access to ChatGPT, but very strictly controlled. So yeah, I think the business needs to use it.
I think from my perspective, we need to use it, and we do use it. It's how you use it is the main point, isn't it? Yeah. I think we're trying to get at. It's how do you use AI to supplement and not replace some of the key points in your business. So for me, again, maybe a controversial thought, that I see AI working with lawyers, not replacing lawyers. There will always be a need for a lawyer. The document reviews, the churn work, maybe AI can do that, but there will always need to be a lawyer to review it and make sure that it's actually right. Funny you should say that you've had AI used against you. We see it more and more now. Letters in that you can absolutely spot from a mile they are AI written. Just the structure, the content, and it does make you smart. But I agree, AI is here to stay. It's how do we maximise its potential? And certainly in-house lawyers are saying to me, we expect you to use AI because actually that will give us a cost saving. And as long as you use it correctly and you're transparent, then we are all for it. So I think, watch this space. Everyone says it. 6 weeks, 6 days, 6 hours, everything changes in AI, but it is the way that all of us will end up going for sure. One last question before we go on to some quick fire questions, George. Yeah. And this is more for me to understand. I always ask this question of any in-house lawyer that I meet. What do you look for from an external provider? Because you can go and you can pick the market, right? There's plenty of lawyers out there, loads of very, very, very good lawyers. But what do you look for from a supplier that sets them apart from everyone else?
I think for me, and I've worked with a lot of lawyers, both in the UK and outside of the UK now, and I think what sets apart a good lawyer from an okay lawyer is their relationship building ability. And what I mean by that is not just do they get on with George and can we go out for a beer and have a chat or whatever. It's more, do they understand the business? Do they understand my challenges? Are they asking me the questions that I'm asking my C-suite guys, which is like, what keeps you up at night? How can we help you with that? Is there anything we can support with? Is that added value that's not just, oh yeah, this matter is X and we're billing the X this month. It's a genuine, heartfelt kind of need to get involved in what's keeping me up at night and what I'm working with. And I think building those relationships for me is absolutely key. I'm fortunate to be surrounded by a lot of good people, including yourself, James. But it's making sure that I can pick up the phone and just say, look, I need a sounding board. Because going full circle on everything we've said, we don't know the answer to everything. We always need somebody to have a chat to. So for me, it's that. And I think, you talked about it before, like being concise. I remember somebody speaking about this years ago, like really in-house lawyers only really have the time to read the first kind of 4 sentences of an advice. So if you've got something important to say it early on, say it right at the front end, because we probably won't get down to the bottom of the email. I think that's completely 100% strictly true, but it's definitely valuable to have, these exec summaries right at the front. So for me, the law firms that set themselves apart are the ones that build those relationships and invest the time to build those relationships too. So they're not on the clock all the time when they're doing that. They're genuinely interested in what we're doing.
Again, that is the same answer many in-house counsel whenever I go to meet people, new or existing clients. That's the answer I get. And I always sit there and think, but isn't that a given? It still dumbfounds me that that doesn't happen. But that's another story. Right, this is the bit that I like the most. I enjoy this part. So I'm going to ask you some quick fire questions. And we're going to kick off now. So are you performance, so KPI, or people-driven?
People. You probably already know that from the answers we've said today, but people, 100%.
What sets Norton apart from its competitors?
Probably people again. Honestly, I've only been here 11 weeks, but the people here on the ground are absolutely fantastic and world-leading top talent. So people again.
Head or heart?
Heart and gut, I think. My gut is one of my most important tools in law, so I'd say probably heart. Yeah.
Is that you as a Leicester City fan?
Yeah, there's a bit of that.
I know the answer to this as well. Micromanage or trust your people?
Yeah, trust, 100% trust, yeah.
Any regrets in your career?
No, don't have regrets. I just don't waste my time on them. You can't change things. When I say that, I mean, like, we talked about growth mindset being key. So your regrets you should turn into positive actions is my view on it.
Love it. Last one. You still have 21, so don't take offence for this last question. If I was to give you a magic wand, George, and I could make you go to 21-year-old George on his motorcycle, probably, what would you say to yourself and why? What's the one bit of advice you would give yourself?
I think just keep going and believe in yourself, and don't think you'll ever know everything, because you won't, and just keep learning. I think that's the key thing. I think we need to be kind to ourselves in this day and age. We've seen a lot of things going on in the news over the last number of weeks and months, and we talked about being a surgeon versus being a lawyer, whatever else. And I think the key thing is we're all trying to get by. We've all got our reasons for living and succeeding. And I think be kind to yourself and others is something that I would kind of want to champion, if it doesn't sound too cheesy.
It doesn't, mate. And what a great note to end what has been a fantastic 50 minutes with you. George, I really mean it. Thank you for taking the time to come on with me today. I know how busy you are. Genuinely, I think it's been brilliant. I'm sure the viewers will love it. Thank you so much.
Cheers, James. Enjoyed it. Thanks very much.